Now here's an area that we're gonna put some extensive work into, but it should not be terribly difficult. It's just gonna be a big structure point and a lot of metal that'll go missing for a short period of time before we put some back. But you see we have a lot of rot here. There's a lot of peppering up through here. There's through here, and it's all around here. Also on the back side of this, you can see right here where the yellow paint is, there's a heavy rot right here. There's some here, and it's all along through here and even up in there. And down inside here, there's very, very, very scaly, and it's really thin. So with this being primarily the driver's door, this is going to be used more often. I've decided to go ahead and we're just going to replace pretty much this whole corner right here. Now this is an area that it seems like if anything this will be rotted out because we have the same thing going on over there. It's just not as bad as it is here, but it's very typical here. This is a little excessive out through here. This tends to be a common place through most dusters. So one reason I really want to get this done too, because there was a lot of heavy swelling of rust in here. So this is really thinned out. So basically I'm just going to make another piece out of our trunk lid that we've been using a lot of stock pieces off of. So I'm going to probably cut it up here somewhere and then bring it down and come across here and replace this and just kind of graft it back in. And then I have another piece here, and it might be my last AMD piece for the car, but it's this guy right here, and it's basically the entire foot of the doorpost, and it comes with the reinforced padding here and then the door pad right here, which is very, very heavy. This is a very heavy piece with all that tacked together. It's actually spot welded together. And so what I'll do, the lip here is the one that exists here. Might be under a little bit of seam sealer, but not too bad. We'll have to bust all this loose and get some measurements, do some stand-ups, and make sure that our top line, we're going to cut it. We'll cut it a little below where it needs to be so that when we can actually slip it in there without all this in the way, we can get an even better cut on it. So that way we're not having big gaps or trying to trim it really close over and over and over. It should be much better way to do it there. But while that's all out, we'll build the outside. I'll take a template first of the back side here, and so that we can duplicate that accurately. It looks like it's pretty much a mirror image of the other side, but not for certain. And that way we can also get in behind all this and treat any metal. If there's any holes in any of that in there, we can replace it while it's right there in front of us and really strengthen up this corner. So we had to make a template for this area right here, right? And we went a little further down behind this because likely when we go to pull this piece off of here, we will be able to put it in there properly. Just to guess, I've never had one of these cut apart specifically, so we're just trying to give it a little extra leeway there. But obviously all this, and we're coming up here to take care of these areas where it was swelled up, so there was thinning of metal. So it'll come up from right here down and come over to here where this hole is and up to about there and down and go across. Okay, so we took a piece of paper, rubbed some pencil on it, and then went through and cut it out. And then you have this piece right here. Okay, there's that curve, there's that notch, here's where that little tiny bit was, and here's where all the splitting was going on right here. So there, we just laid it out and carefully drew around it, and actually extended it up a little bit because I needed a little bit more than what I had for paper. And then you're left with this. So all we got to do is cut this out, clean the backside up of all this stuff, and we'll throw it in the soak tank. And that way we'll have a clean piece of metal that'll be ready to go in there after we get the other piece cut off and all that kind of complexity, so stay tuned for that. So I've very roughly broken away all of this, and we're just gonna take a look. We got that, this piece here, and that there, okay? So what you're looking at, I had to cut through not just the piece that you normally see, which is this this kind of up-kick boot shape, but this piece here, which is basically the same as this here. this flat surface I'm rubbing right there is what is actually mounted to the rocker panel top. So I'm gonna have to remove this, probably grind it out, maybe cut this. I can lift it up and then try to bust the spot welds that are holding it in. I'm guessing there's probably 2 or 3, probably 3 in there. And then I'll have to clear what's left of the old flange from the outer skin all the way around up to here. And then we'll have to clear out some of the piece here behind it, which is what this was here. Our template that we made, that's what will go back in there like that, okay? So a little bit of deconstruction, some cleanup and inspection of these areas and make sure, because see, look here, this is very, very pitted, this heavy piece. Now I'm sure it's actually, it still feels very strong, but it's compromised a little bit, but this is gonna be a nice fresh piece we can put in there. And once we clear some more of this will fit right in there, even closer than it does now. So, nice piece. Just gotta take our time and remove this correctly. Don't remove too much, and then we should be good. Okay, about 20 minutes in from the last video you saw where I was talking about deconstructing this. I have deconstructed quite a bit of it, mainly the thick piece right here. And you'll see there is actually a rust hole here. I was able to kind of open that up a little bit with that. You can see when developing, so at least a little square will replace. It looks like it's actually good here. It just has surface rust on it, and we'll have to weld this back together, put it flat. Now I did notice here, now the piece that we're making from the template right here that I showed you, this is actually a full piece from basically this. It's all a part of that, because if you look here, see it's all one big happy piece, okay? Now down here, if you look, you see that flexing out. There's about 2 or 3 spot welds down through here that are no longer holding, because when I was bringing this piece out, they went snap, 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 okay? Now there's rust in there, not heavy rust, it's about probably like this here. But what I'm going to do, see this line, I'm going to go ahead and just cut this, extend the piece here, bring this out and put a new piece in, and then it'll tack weld, or not tack weld, but it will stitch weld to this piece as it would be original, and then we will spot weld it back to the pinch seam, okay? That's the plan here, just to, because there is a little rust hole right here, and the blasting we did kind of exposed that. So really, I'm just going to go through here, cutting wheel, and just extend a straight cut over, and we'll have to probably take a chisel or something and then work it down so that we don't cut into this and we don't cut into this down here. Okay, now all of that extra material, old material, has been removed, and we can now fit the new piece into place, okay? Now we want to pre-fit it and make sure that if we do any trimming cuts, like up here on this part, so that it fits in there flush and we could butt weld them together, we need to make sure that it all fits into place. So a couple things I'm looking at here, we have a nice straight edge from about here up, as well as on this from about here down. So really easy on that one. We get here and square up, eyeball it here, and we could put a straight edge against it, and look, it's nice and straight there, okay? Now you're seeing a little gap here because it's setting out, so you're kind of looking in behind there. But that's what you want right there. So that's good. And we're good down here. We're almost flush. If we push in, it is flush then. That's where it needs to be. I marked a line on the back side here of where these joints originally stopped, and that's right there. So it's right there in the neighborhood of that. Good enough. And back here, obviously this will squeeze in once we remove the material. That's why it's not puckered out like it is there now. If you notice, this piece here is sticking out further than that one. Now keep in mind it is aftermarket, so it might have a touch of difference. Now the only example that we have here of it being off is right here. There's a gap in here about 1/8 of an inch, and it will not go down, okay? That's because of all this squeezing around it. So what I did, I'm gonna make a tape line here, and we're gonna cut underneath the tape line so that this will fit right up to this. So what I have done, I have went really tight against the top or the bottom piece right here. See, this tape is right up against it. And as we come around, it just has a slight taper until it gets to the edge. That way, when we go to set this in, we'll have a nice gap here for the weld to fit into when we get ready for it. And then by the time you get over here, it should have a gap here as well, and it will set down and go in, okay? That way it'll fit up nice down here, it'll fit up here, all the way around here, and it'll fit up here, and it'll look like it was never removed. And it's a very nice looking piece. It might need a little massage, maybe in here to make it fit, but it looks like it might suffice. We might be okay. So that's why we're just gonna go ahead and get into it, and we're gonna cut that right across here. We want to make sure our tape line is tight against that surface, just like that, so that when we look at it, is where it needs to be. Okay, so we just went over this with the wire wheel, got all that loose rust, all the dust out of it, wiped it down with some wax and grease remover just to kind of pick up any of the leftover residue. And now we have concrete and metal etch. We're just soaking it on there, taking this parts cleaner brush and just keeping it nice and goopy, so that we can hopefully lift some of that rust off of there, even going up into the structure that we can reach and covering all that, okay? Okay, now I'm back around on this side, and I have been soaking a lot of this in our metal etch, and I need to really just wire wheel some of this, but this part here will not go on just yet. We really need to kind of build back in the inner structure of that, and I have a piece over here that I've been kind of preparing for that. You can see the copper weld-through primer right here, and I also have some back here. I'll show you that in a second. And I've also got holes drilled in the new piece that will come in here and up to this, and I'll have a little kick down leg on it. It's drilled, it's got weld-through primer on it, and I'm going to try to fit it up and be able to plug weld it into position. After I made that piece, I decided I really needed to cut part of this out over here, and this piece here sits over top, and that's why that is here like this, because it will sit over top of that. And the way it's sprung, when I cut it, it went in, so it will push back out, and it's kind of under tension, which is good because it kind of keeps the bodies a little more nimble that way instead of just being kind of sloppy. So you'll see that come in. There'll be this little kind of a dog leg left. We'll have to piece that one in, but that's okay. We just want to get it started so we can start getting a nice clean metal in. We'll clean all this up, and then hopefully shortly we can have the whole lower jam in. So here's the piece. I have put some of our bends on it for strength and on really all angles here to kind of match the presentation of this. The weld-through primer is on this side. I cleaned all that, the old green paint off of this, and it'll go in here. It needs to go on the inside of this piece here. So what we have there, I'll have to prepare this a little more. I did get a lot of the rust off, so I'm going to buzz it off a little bit more, and then we'll have to put our weld-through primer on that. But you can see here, this will have to line up, and this will line up here. I have it pretty much where it will. It'll fit where it needs to, right there. And then this will kind of see how it's gapped out right there. We'll use our clamps and kind of press it into position. This will help line it up here to where that goes up where it needs to, like that. So it's a little confusing, a little springy. So it's a little confusing, a little springy when you're just trying to do it with one hand. If I do it like this, you'll see, and it'll draw it all in. Kind of get it like that there. And we actually also need a little piece here. Some of it, I made an error in cutting a little bit too much off this corner, but that's okay. We really just kind of fill it in with a small piece. And then this down here. So we're kind of hodgepodging some of this back together, but it will be as it was structurally. And when we go to weld that up, see we have the two kick-outs curved down here. So we can line this up where it needs to go, about so. And then we'll put this over top of it and line the outside, the body lines out here in the jam area, the door post. And then ultimately we can take our clamp, in this case the small one, and we can clamp it together. And then we'll have to kind of move it around. So that's where it will sit. You bring that out, and we'll be pretty much in business. And there we go. We have the inner piece rebuilt. The extra little section, which I talked about, what I had to cut out later. So from here to here, we have all fresh connection of the pinch weld. This big gap here, I went ahead and just used my little skills and just filled it up. And that was a big hole to fill up, but it's a good practice for welding off of sheet metal, okay? So this will all get cleaned up, even though you won't see this side at all. But you need this to be smooth right through here at least. So we'll go ahead and clean all that up, make it nice and smooth. Do the same thing over here, like there, up and there. The next step, remember this hole here? I've got a piece cut out for that. We'll put it in there. This here will just get welded back up because I had to cut through it to get the old piece of the dog leg out, okay? And then, like I said, once this smooths out and this stuff here, that's all smooth, then this will be able to fit properly in there. And you saw how I started on this. I had it all clamped together. So that way when we put this back in, it won't go, oh no, what happened? All right, so some preparation has been taking place here. I welded in this piece after I cut the old one out. And the old one, it could kind of deceive you. Here was that's how it was. Had that really thinned out area. As you can see, all this pitting. And that's where it thinned out. You can see those couple holes where it just went out. But underneath, it was fine. Until you got over here, that's just kind of a surface rust. But it was actually fine on the bottom side, but the top is where it went from there down. So, new piece. Where I had to cut that to get some of the old infrastructure out. I welded that back together after I kind of flattened it back out. Cleaned up some of the welds along here where there would be attachment of the new piece. Eastwood rust encapsulator, that's what you're seeing in silver. And then I took sandpaper and opened up some of the bare metal so that we could put our weld through primer on it. So the perimeter has been pretty much masked out with that. And in our new piece, I decided to go ahead and just drill the holes in the new piece. So we have all the holes down here on the dog leg, the flap down here, these two pieces, which will go right here, and then the upright on this side. So it's pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to spend a few minutes and just get it all lined up good. I might have to take a little bit of either this out or the very top of that one. Just kind of grind it down just a hair, paper thin, so it'll fit in there good. All right, so I've got the piece anchored in here really good now. You see a lot of the plug welds that'll need cleaned up all the way around here, and it leaves me with these here. I'm gonna connect those. But what I started out doing, I anchored it in there and got it, lined up where it just seems like it wouldn't line up, and I proceeded to tack it here first, okay, so that it's all flush with this. And this pretty much, if you wanted to say so, it was kind of flapping outward like that, but it wasn't. And then I took our clamps, our series of clamps, and I took this one, completely put it around to this one here, so that would hold this flap against the rocker, and in turn would hold the whole piece flush, okay? And then along here, where these two pieces needed to be nice and flat together, I took some clamps and just put them in there like that. And then you could take, with these style, you could take your nozzle and you could put it right in there, okay? And you just work your way down to where it's all nice and flush. You get these two anchored in down here, enough to leave some seam sealer to go in there. But that'll be obviously after you dress all this out. And then up here, where you have all these contours, when you weld one on the corner, like see this is a little bump out and that's a little bump out, you could weld one on the corner as long as they line up. And then you could take your ball peen or a body hammer, and in some cases you can even take like a little punch to help conform the inside of it, because sometimes the aftermarket stuff does not conform in the little dips as well as it should. But while this is still hot, it's kind of malleable, and you could take it and just pop it down in there. So I took like the grinder tool here and put it right up in here and popped it, and while it's still hot, it'll make it a little softer, and you can punch it down in there. Same thing here, and then I just weld it and anchor it to each of the points to where it leaves us pretty much just welding it all up. And I'm having a little bit of an issue with the gas. I think the nozzle, that's why we're having this little bit of porosity sticking out here, little nipples, so to speak. But down in here, it's a little hard to see because it's dark, but we just need to push that in and then brace it back tight against this here, and we can plug weld it there. But overall, it's in a really good spot. We'll have to weld the 2 plug welds down inside of there, so it'll help resist cracking and, you know, just give it more of a structural bracing there. But it's looking like it should, but only much, much stronger.
And now, a classic Indiana car commercial.
Mickey Thompson presents the Off-Road Championship Grand Prix. Saturday night, January 25th at the Hoosier Dome. See the Trick Factory Grand National Sport Truck, the Wild 3 and 4-wheel Pro ATV, the Unlimited's open wheel racing excitement, the all-new Ultra Stock Funny Car, the wildest show on wheels. It's all great family entertainment for men, women, and children. Indoors with a money-back guarantee. Meet the drivers at a 5:30 autograph session. Racing fires off at 7. Tickets at all Ticketmaster locations and the Hoosier Dome.
That works. So this is the top part, and you can see it was pretty crusty too, even up here. I mean, that's just a nightmare. It would eventually start probably eating through. It's actually, that is swollen a little bit. So yeah, it was starting to get into this. So this is junk, and I'm glad it's out. And now we can basically just remove what's left of the flange all the way up to here and here, and then get rid of this piece down here. And then, yeah, okay, so down here I can actually see where I talk about a hole back here in this back panel, inner cowl. It's pretty rotted down through here. It's very, very pitted, and there's the hole I was speaking of. It was behind this flange. All right, so clearing off all these little pieces. Okay, we're using a combination. I know a lot of people probably frown on this, but if you get an old, sometimes I just buy a new one, a cheap paint scraper. It works great for getting in real thin little places, and you can at least start to open them up a little bit. They got enough spring to them usually that you can put a big chisel in there and bust things off, okay? So I've got this part here off. I'm gonna clear the rest of this off with a grinder. Same thing here. We got to do this, the rest of this one, but this piece here came off, and this piece was really easy. It was actually very rusted as far as the weld, so I was able to take this and it completely just exploded and came off there. Unfortunately, don't have that one on video. That was kind of funny. And then stuff like this, just clean it up. But it's worse because if you notice here, I noticed some kind of caking of this metal down in this corner, and when I went to stick the screwdriver here and give it a bump, it exposed the crack that went all the way down through here. Now usually when you have steel like this, just regular slightly heavy gauge steel, and it cracks, it's probably because it's rusted through. It's pitted so bad that it's thinned out and it's rusted. So from about here to, I would guess about here, it's like that. So what I'll have to do, similar to the other side but much larger scale, I'm gonna probably have to cut this whole rectangle out and replace it with a fresh piece of steel. Now, am I intimidated or scared by that? No, and you should not be either, because we this deep into this project and have doing stuff like this at surprise levels all along. This should not phase us. It's just another step, a little bit more time put into it, and it's just a flat piece, and it's very accessible. It does drop down just a hair right here, so keep that in mind if you are in this same area. It kind of drops down basically for the other piece to have a transition that's smoother. But other than that, drill your hole. This is a drain hole, for in case anything does get me water, it can drain out here. So put your hole back in there. But we'll have to cut this out and replace that. But hey, we're gonna have fresh steel there. We're gonna have a brand new piece on top of it. And we are glad that we have replaced this. And it's funny thinking back about a half a week ago that I was even debating this. Now it's like, yeah, absolutely. We see what this is and we're gonna replace it, and it's gonna be brand new in here. All right, some work has been done here. I've removed this section and I've just removed this here, okay? This is pretty rough. Let's actually see it coming through here. This is galvanizing. They always, Chrysler was good about galvanizing the rockers, but anywhere obviously where they would burn a weld in or something would get it from the opposite side where it wasn't, then you would have the rot, and then you have debris that we'll have to clean out. Like that stuff. So this will be a pretty easy piece. Just put a little 90-degree bend in it, make a template from it. I've already made the template from this one, and I wanted to leave this bend on here because it was actually in good shape, even though don't cut yourself there if we're doing that. And I removed it off the flange, or the flanged piece here, which is actually pretty easy because it had enough rot in it, and some of them weren't spot welded very well, so we'll be able to anchor that down much better than it was originally there. And obviously you're going to overpower the rust that there was going to be there before. I was able to put the piece on here and then get a nice break where the piece needs to be cut off here. We'll still cut just below it, so that way if we do put it in and it needs some shaving, you just take it and buzz it off until it fits good. Have a nice little gap in there, a little tiny gap, and then it should be ready to weld. So I'm going to spend some time making these pieces here. This one, like the one I just basically knocked out. And remember, we want to re-add that hole back. You won't see it, but it will have a purpose. I've got some things going this morning, just got back into the swing of things. It's actually the day after Christmas, but we've got our piece. It's ultimately going to be the lower doorpost here. It's prepped. We've got all the holes drilled down all the flanges. It'll mount to this part and the rocker all the way up here, and even these two down here, which will ultimately weld on top of this after we weld this one in, okay? We've got our weld through primer on this as well, this flange, because this piece that we cut out of the old trunk lid, it's trimmed and ready. It's gonna fit in there just like that. It's gonna weld all the way up to all this, that, and it's gonna have to spot weld or plug weld down through here. So we're gonna have to drill some holes on that one. And then, yeah, that's pretty much the basics of that. Just some things you have to prep out and weld into place. We'll clean this bit of debris out of the rocker panel, and maybe with whatever limits we have of reach, I'll sand some of this down with some 80 grit, vacuum it out, wipe it down, and then we'll spray some Eastwood rust encapsulator down through there. But remember later, to protect areas like the weld that'll be on these joints that we can't reach from the backside because they will be bare metal because of the heat, we can always stick tubes through here where the hole is there, and there's a couple other places down through there that we can access, and we can use the tubes that we get from Eastwood and their internal frame coating. Now this will sit on top of the nozzle, okay, and you got this long tube, and down here at the very end of it, this one's a little dirty, it's an old one I got. It's got a 360-degree spray nozzle on it. So once it pressurizes, it pushes it out all directions and in out the top. So if you stick it all the way up in here in a place like this, and you hit the trigger and drag it out, it'll coat everything inside of there. So that's the plan to do And all these areas that are, you know, inaccessible, you know, in the cowl, areas that we won't be opening up. Some of you will, but if you have to weld it back, you might need to access that. So that's some other protection you can use with the weld through primer and then the encapsulator. It helps just cut everything down to a minimum of possible corrosion. So we're gonna get some of these things ready to go, start welding the little pieces in, and then we'll jump on there and see how we're looking. All right, so you saw us put some encapsulator down in here. This is all cleaned up here with the wire wheel and our, I use a cutting wheel to get in these real tight little areas to clean up the metal. Now, yeah, this is the area that you won't see, but let's just try to follow through with good quality, okay? So this is really smooth here. Cleaned up a couple of our welds, like right here, it was bumped out. Well, we know that this here is gonna have to sit on top of that flush, so I went ahead and absolutely shaved that down. These, I just trimmed them down a little bit and did that. So what we have left is a little remnant of some of the rust, like that's kind of in the metal. You really had to grind it down to get it out. So we're gonna use more of this encapsulator. Okay, so we have this situation here under control. It is completely welded in. You saw me grind a lot of that off, just flatten it all out. It's nice and smooth here, here, all the edges. All right. So we will put a little bit of our encapsulator on top of this. We scratched it up with some 80 grit, so we can spray that on there so it'll get in all these little areas. It is one of them areas we can hit later with the little nozzle that I explained earlier, if need be. But we also do need to put our weld-through primer in the perimeter around here, 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 and up the sides, okay? That way, when we go to put this guy back in, it'll fit right against it. It'll correspond with all of these. We've got the weld-through primer in place. We remember to put it here for this guy, this area right here, all the way up the sides, on that front flange of the rocker panel. Okay. The reason it's wanting to push out is because it has this piece right here. See how it protrudes out? Don't know why they do that exactly, but it's really just a matter of this piece squeezing together. So we're going to put some clamps on it, make sure it's nice and tight and ready to weld. last weld on that lower door post. And I'm just gonna tell you something. I'm glad to have these two done because I've been stretching both of these out for a couple of weeks, getting the video all in place, getting it done. We'll get to come around later and smooth all this out. But I'm just gonna go ahead and drop this video off right here. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope there was something useful. Hope you, if you're learning how to do this one exactly, that it's really helping you out. So until next time, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking, commenting, all that good stuff. Until next time.